Ladies and gentlemen, there are so many amazing gaming consoles, but one of the most notorious, and for a good reason, is the PlayStation 2. In this video, I'm going to be telling you what I think are the top 10 PlayStation 2 games, and let me tell you, this list was incredibly hard to make because there's so many great games for this console. So let's go ahead and get right into this video. So I'm not even exaggerating when I would say it would probably be easy to make a top 100 PS2 game list because it was so hard to narrow this down, and there's absolutely no possible way that everybody's going to agree with this list. The PlayStation 2 truly had so many classics, so your top 10 list is going to be different than mine, and that's going to be different than somebody else's, but these 10 games I feel the most strongly about. So before we get started, if you could hit a like and subscribe. I just want to say thank you for all the support lately. We just hit 11,000 subscribers. That's amazing, and let's go ahead and get right into this video. So when creating this list, the very first game that came to mind was Tony Hawk Underground, and the PlayStation 2 had so many great Tony Hawk games. I've been playing Tony Hawk games all the way since the PlayStation 1 demo disc from Pizza Hut. Like, I'm pretty sure you just got to play the first level over and over, but I've been playing ever since then, and I've played every Tony Hawk game since. Tony Hawk Underground was so cool because it made you really feel like it was your adventure, like you were trying to become a pro skater, and you had this beef with this kid named Eric, and that's still one of like the worst villains in all of gaming. I think an underrated villain for sure. But it was so groundbreaking because not only was it the most realistic skateboarding game at the time, but you could actually break your skateboard for once. I actually replayed this game last year, and I was very sure it was not going to hold up as good as I remembered, but it held up just fine, and it's still a gem to this day. So this was the perfect way to start off this list. So how could I possibly make a top 10 PlayStation 2 list without including a Grand Theft Auto game? And where do you start, right? You start with Grand Theft Auto 3, which was very groundbreaking at the time. Do you go with Vice City, or do you pick San Andreas? It was definitely a toss-up between Vice City and San Andreas, but I think San Andreas was the most impressive. I mean, we're still quoting memes from this very day that were created about GTA San Andreas. It was so cool, you know, being CJ, getting into this big gang war. You could actually get buff and work out. And it truly was so futuristic at the time. Like, playing this game, I was sure a game could never get more impressive and more realistic than this. A great thing about PlayStation 2 games is they all hold up incredibly well. Like, maybe the gameplay is a little janky or the graphics aren't as good, but you're still gonna have a good time every time you play these. And you could pick up San Andreas right now and jump in, and it would be very easily to see why it was so beloved. So another top 10 PlayStation 2 game, at least in my opinion, is Kingdom Hearts 2. Kingdom Hearts 2 follows Sora, Donald, and Goofy on their continuing quest. It was 1 year since the events of Kingdom Hearts. The story begins in Twilight Town, a quiet burg nestled between night and day. Sora and friends are joined by a vibrant new cast of characters, including King Mickey himself. So I have to admit something. In this game, you get to the Nightmare Before Christmas world. It was the first time I ever rage quit in a game ever. I can't remember the exact part because it's been so long, but I remember getting so frustrated that I actually took out my game and broke it. I had my first real gamer moment. The very next day I felt devastated about this, so I begged my mom to go get me a copy, and I think I lied to her saying that my disc broke somehow when I was taking it out to clean it. I'm not sure she ever believed me or not, but she did get the game, and then I ended up finishing it, and it's still one of the most important games I think I ever played. I remember they would show off the trailer to this on TV all the time, and there was this beautiful song, and I was like obsessed with it. I really feel like I'm one of the few people who enjoyed Kingdom Hearts 3, but I still think 2 is better, and I would actually love for them to remaster this game for the PS5. Now let's talk about Ratchet and Clank, Up Your Arsenal. And just that title alone, like being a little kid reading that, you're like, dude, look at this title. This is so funny. They're trying to say up your ass. And then your friends are like, oh my god, that's so funny. Yeah, life used to be a lot simpler. The gameplay is similar to previous games in the series, and introduces features such as a new control system and more levels in the upgrade system for weapons. It follows Ratchet and Clank's adventure through a fictional universe to defeat a robotic villain, Dr. Nefarious, who intends to destroy all organic life. Up Your Arsenal was the first in the series to offer online multiplayer. The service was terminated for PlayStation 2 in June of 2012, so the service was actually supported for quite a while. Whenever you think of PlayStation mascots, or just PlayStation series in general, Ratchet and Clank always pops up. And again, when I was making this list and I was thinking, what game should I add? What game should I take out? This game popped in my mind immediately and I knew I had to add it. So there's so many great games on the PS2 that have to do with like war and that you would call Call of Duty clones now. and I didn't know which one to choose, but the one I'm picking may be a little controversial, but I truly think it deserves to be on this list, and I'm talking about a game called Black. One day I went over to my friend's house, and he was just playing a game, and as soon as I walked in, I was like, oh my god, what is that? That looks like you're really in a war or something. And, you know, this was all the way back in like 2007 or something, so if we were to go back and look at it, or the footage you're seeing on the screen, you're probably like, how is that even possible? But at the time, it truly was remarkable. In this game, the player assumes control of Jack Keller, a Black Ops agent being interrogated by his previous missions involving a terrorist operation. Gameplay involves players confronting enemies by using firearms and grenades. The game is notable for its heavily stylized cinema-inspired action as well as its sound quality, and focus on destructive effects during gameplay. Whenever the conversation comes up for games that should have got a sequel, or games that need a remaster or a continuance, I always have to mention Black. Like, I'm pretty sure this game was made by EA, and you know, EA loves to make money. This is something they should bring back, and I think it would have a big audience. But even if you were to play this now, in 2024, it holds up incredibly well. So when making this list, I was like, of course I have to add a fighting game, and you know, do I go with Soul Calibur, or do I go with something more PlayStation-y? Is that a word? PlayStation-y? Probably not. So then I thought, sure, I'll add a Tekken game, but which Tekken game? Because there was actually quite a few on the PlayStation 2. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to include Tekken 5. Tekken 5 is credited for taking the series back to its roots. It incorporated a faster, more fluid fighting system, improved graphics, returning characters, and some of the Tekken series trademark infinite stages. New to Tekken 5 was the crush system, which affects the vulnerability of characters while they attack. Another cool thing, if I'm remembering correctly, is Tekken 5 also allowed players to customize their fighter for the very first time, allowing them to change colors of their outfits, buy additional costumes only available to a few characters, and equip them with items by using money gained from playing the story, survival, time attack, the side story Devil Within, and arcade battle modes. Tekken 5 is a quintessential Tekken game in my opinion. The roster almost has 40 characters, and it's everything you want in just a good fighting game, so it easily earned a spot on this list. One area where the PlayStation 2 shines, amazingly, is in RPGs and JRPGs, and you could easily make a top 100 RPG list on the PlayStation 2, and there would probably be games left off, but the ones that deserve to be on this list, and that probably mean the most to me, are Final Fantasy X and X-2. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to group those two together as one entry. The story of Final Fantasy X is told by Titus, a sports star from a futuristic metropolis. During a match, Titus gets swept up to another world and joins Summoner Yuna and her friends on a journey to save another world from a rampaging monster known as Sin. I feel like at the time, I didn't appreciate this game when it first came out, because I had only played Final Fantasy VII and maybe 8 before playing this, and I was like, okay, this is a little different, and this story is a little weird. But I actually played this game with my cousins, who are older than me, and they kind of raised me a little bit, and they picked it up day one, so we kind of played through it together. And at first I didn't understand what was going on, and then by the end of it, I was in love with it. And then unfortunately, both of my cousins ended up getting murdered, like a year later. So whenever I think about this game, I think about the time I had with them, and I just cherish it so much more. And even to this day, I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan. Like, I'm currently playing Final Fantasy VII Remake on my PS5, and I just picked up Final Fantasy VI Remastered on my Switch. But to the ends of time, this will always be my favorite Final Fantasy adventure. The next game we're talking about today is Resident Evil 4. 6 years after the events of Resident Evil 2, Raccoon City survivor Leon Kennedy has been dispatched to a secluded European village to investigate the disappearance of the US president's daughter. What he discovers there is unlike anything he's ever faced before. So Resident Evil 4 was released on a couple consoles. I know this and the GameCube, maybe on PC, I'm not sure, but I always heard that the PS2 version was a definitive version to play this game. I actually played Resident Evil 4 maybe 2 months ago, like the original one, not the remake, and it was such a special game. When you play through it, it's so easy to see why Resident Evil became as big as it has, and why it's still one of the most beloved series to this day. From the very moment you start playing the game, it just has you immersed, and you want to figure out what's going on. And then when you think you know what's going on, and you're like, okay, I see what's happening here, they throw a twist or a turn at you, and the story is so engaging. Me myself, I'm actually not the biggest horror fan. It's probably the genre of gaming I play the least, but it was so easy for me to add this game to this list. So when creating this list of games, I just thought about games that reminded me of the PS2 the most, or the games that instantly popped in my head. And another one was SSX Tricky. Like, I always knew I was gonna like Tony Hawk because I grew up skateboarding. I don't think I've ever been snowboarding, But SSX Tricky was so freaking fun, and it was so cool. Like, it was the epitome of a cool game. It was the epitome of the early 2000s, and it just captures that time in gaming so well. In SSX Tricky, players can choose among 12 characters, participate in races or trick competitions, and earn rewards. The game was named after Run DMC's It's Tricky, a song that is featured throughout the game, and one of the major new features in this game was the addition of Uber tricks. Very unrealistic and exaggerated tricks, often involving detaching the board from the snowboarder's feet. The player was able to gain access to Uber tricks during play after they filled their adrenaline bar. Performing 6 Uber tricks earned the player unlimited boost for the rest of the race, and it was just such an easy game to pick up and play. Again, this is something that I feel like could easily be remastered, or they could just add a new entry entirely. The only problem is, I'm pretty sure EA made this game, so if they did bring it back, it would probably have loot boxes somehow, or some kind of battle pass. So if they do bring it back, maybe they should just remaster it, because it was perfect the way it was. So to top off this list, I knew I had to add a racing game, because the PS2 actually had so many great racing games. And if you made a list like this and you added Gran Turismo 4, that would be perfectly fine. But the racing game that I think about the most is Midnight Club 2. The world's most notorious drivers meet each night on the streets of LA, Paris, and Tokyo. You get to choose from a collection of performance-enhanced cars or bikes and compete head-to-head to make a name for yourself. Again, this game kind of captured the culture at the time. Like, I'm pretty sure this game came out around the time that the first Fast and the Furious movies were coming out, and everybody just loved car culture. Like, I used to go to school and talk to my friends about my favorite car and cars that I was going to buy when I grew up, which at this time in my life, I actually don't care about cars at all. And I'd argue this game has, if not the best, one of the best gaming soundtracks of all time. If you've played this game, you know exactly why it's on this list, and if you haven't, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice. I'd argue it's one of the best video games of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, this list was so hard to make, because if you're putting 10 games on a list, you're leaving off like 200. So in the comments below, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. What are your favorite PS2 games? Because I'm sure my 10 aren't going to be anybody else's 10 in the entire world. Please forgive me the way I pronounce some stuff. I still have a bunch of stitches in my mouth, so it's kind of painful to talk. It's very hard to pronounce a lot of words, so if I was slurring anything, that's the reason why. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you could. We are going on both platforms, and it's very cool. We have this real community online now. Thank you for all the support lately, and you guys know me. I'll see you soon with a new video. Peace out.